Hey guys, how is going? So in this video we'll be discussing about telemetry and how telemetry was evolved and what all things you can do with the telemetry. So let's think about one scenario. You have a payment service, and in the olden days, if you want to trace it, let's say you have controller, you have a service layer, you have a DAO layer, and let's say you have some other things, let's say Kafka producer, right? Now, if you want to track it, right, what's going on each of the level, so how we used to do, maybe we can introduce some of the method variables, let's say traceId or let's say request id, and that we have to pass it to all the layers, right? So that will solve our purpose, right? Now the question comes, right, what will have if you have multiple services, right? So for that reason, right, I cannot tell all the microservices. Let's say one service is owned by me or my team, and there are many other services which is owned by some external vendors. Now will they will be introducing that variable, let's say trace id or request id? The answer will be no or yes. You never know actually, right? So to solve that issue, so we came up, basically the industry has came up with a standardization which is OpenTelemetry. Now what is OpenTelemetry is kind of, they provide one jar, right, or we call it as agent. That agent basically, it imports or it exports all the data, your log data. Okay, now going back, so let's say you have multiple services, right? So for each of the services you can have some trace id, but the trace id has to be the starting and end service, right? So let's say you are calling from service a to service b to service c, service d, right? So trace id has to be common for all of them, because that is the id with which you will be tracing it, right? And then there will be a span id which is for only for that particular service, right? So that, for each service what's going on inside you can see for that span id. So I'll be showing a demo how you can see the trace id and span id, but this is the overall picture what we are trying to do over here. Now in industry we call it as observability, and to make the observability, we basically came up with a tool called telemetry. Now that it's very, lot of things are there in telemetry, so it's amazing. And we'll be showing the graphs, what we can do with the graphs, and at the each binary level, right, how we can track it, how much time it took, right, what is the cpu memory, or let's say what is the jvm memory. All these things we can do it very easily, right? So let's go to the next portion of it. Okay, for the data collection, we'll be using the Prometheus, and we'll be using jaeger. Maybe my pronunciation is wrong, but these are the tools, or I would say, these are the exporters we'll be using. These are completely free. You just need a Docker, and then you are good to go. So first, we'll be creating two services, and those two services will be doing their job and push the data into the, the telemetries. Now coming back to the system design, as I said, there will be two services I have given over here, service 1 and service 2, and these two guys I'll be having on API over here in service 1. That API ultimately it will generate the trace ID and spy ID, and you'll be amazed. I mean, you'll see it's very amazing. Automatically it will create, and then it will push the data into the logs. And also service 2, essentially service 1 it will call the service 2 by the REST template, or the REST client. And then what's going on inside all the services, right, you will see in the telemetry form. So it will give a nice data where you can track how much time each services or each matter it took, and then we will see the jvm, basically the jvm time series we will see. All right, let's get started with the demo. All right, so I have, already, with the interest of time, I created this Docker compose file, and there are a few other files out there. We'll go each of the files. So ultimately we need a collector. So as I said earlier, right, so we have this service 1 and service 2, and they are emitting, or they are essentially logging the data into the console, or let's say we will be having logback file, or let's say log4j file. Now there will be somebody who will be collecting the data, right? So I'm talking about this guy. Now this guy will collect the data. Now what he will do with this data, right? So there has to be some consumer for that. Now these guys you can see over here, this Prometheus or Grafana, these guys are the consumer of that. Now so this is nothing but it will export the data, and this guy, it's like an agent for each of the services, it will collect the data, right? So which is nothing but, when you see here, these are the nothing but the collectors. So this is the nothing but collector is but who will be collecting the data, right? So one of the so these are the you know uh, these are two essentially tools which will be consuming this data, right? And for me this, so you can see over here, I have this collector. Now this is how we have to define for each of the collector. Now these are the exporters, so basically I'm exporting the data to these guys, right? So one of them will be doing the tracings. So let's say, as I discussed earlier, right, we'll be having traceId and spanId. So that analysis will be done by one of the exporter, and there will be one more exporter that will be for the graphs, let's say the JVM size, or let's say if I want to fire some queries, right? um, and then some good matrices. So once you enable this too, you will see that there will be nice UI. It will be very nice, and you can feel it actually, what's going on inside the microservices. Yep. So this is the Prometheus. Now Prometheus is running on 9090 port, and we have this guy which is running on this node 4317. So these two collectors, so I have to basically engage these two collectors while I'm running the application. So I'll show you how we are injecting these exporters while running the application, and that will be very easy. So they have made very easily. So there is a wide documentation for this. For the OpenTelemetry, I'll be attaching this in the video description, so you can come over here and see how you can enable this. So if I go further down, so first thing what you need is actually one agent. So this is the agent I'll be passing. So essentially, this agent is, so the portion which I'm clicking over here, right, this agent is nothing but I am pointing over here. So this is nothing but this agent, so which will essentially collecting all the data, right? Now once I collected the data, I have to export it somewhere, right? So for the exporting, I'll be using these exporters. So there will be Zipkin will be there, or there will be many applications out there, right? So these exporters are, I have mentioned over here, these are the two exporters, and I'll be passing over here for this port, and I'll show you in the code also when I'll be passing it. So ultimately, we have to run the application in such a manner that we'll have to pass this JVM arguments, and ultimately it will do its job. Okay, to make our life easy, I am using Docker, and I am using these two latest images so that there is no issues with the environment. And once it is done, we can make it up and running. We can basically run the Docker compose so that these two guys are up and running, and then we can run our applications. Now coming to the project, right? So I have used the Gradle as because I love Gradle. I don't need fancy dependencies. It's just the web application I'll be writing. So this web application will be having one API, and that API will be calling one more application. So let's go over to the code. It's very simple. It's nothing fancy. So if I come over here, in the resources, there is nothing ultimately. So and if I come over here, I have controller, and inside the controller there is no fancy coding. It's just two APIs are there. So this API I'm doing just logging of it, and then I'm calling one of the application from here, from the service layer, and I'm using a REST client. So if you see the REST client bean, it should be somewhere here. I'm not doing anything, just creating a bean, and then I'm calling the application. Alright, so I'm calling this application external. Now this is service A ultimately, right? And now there is one more service I have written. Again, that is also, it's not fancy. This is the build.gradle file for that, and again it's again web-based application, right? And in the sample controller you will see this external, so which is nothing but calling this guy just to show that how the service to service call it looks like. So this API I'm calling, and if I go inside this, and there are just a logging and just giving a success message that hey, I'm just called from external service, so I'm done. So one thing to note here, right, the trace ID and span ID, which is our original discussion, right? So if you see none in this case, right, I am using it. So automatically the system or the agent, it will inject that. So if you maybe if you are a old Java code, right, coder, right? So we used to have MDC. So in the MDC, maybe I can come back to the MDC a little bit later on, because let's try to look into the easy thing. Then we'll come to the little bit complex things. Now, little bit, going back to the logging portion, right? So I need the trace ID and span ID, right? Now this trace ID and span ID, this will be coming over here. Now what is X? All these things, right? These are nothing but the MDC. In the MDC we are following this pattern, so it will be there in the context, and from the context I'm reading the trace ID and span ID. Now I maybe at the end of the video, right, if you stay connected with the video, I'll be explaining a little bit more about the MDC and how we can put the data inside the MDC and how we can grab the data from the context. So stay connected so that we can go to the little bit deeper of that, right? So this is my logback file. So whoever doesn't know about logback file, so it's basically, if I run my application on the console, I can put into some format which is nothing but I'm showing as a pattern, and then it will show in that pattern in the console, right? And the same thing I have done over here. So I'm using logback file over here. You can use log4j also, I don't mind, but ultimately, this is how it should print. So it should print, this trace ID and span ID with this name span ID trace ID. If you wish, you can change this variable to your name also. I can change with my name also, that doesn't matter, right? But this is how the industry prefers. So you can give trace ID and span ID, and you'll see the magic, right? It will be showing the end to end how the trace ID and span ID, it will populate, right? Okay, so let's build our applications. Let me run the build command. It'll be super fast. And let me run a build command in my external service as well. Build. I mean, you can use Gradle build also. That doesn't matter. I'm a little bit lazy. All right, build is successful, right? So first let's do one thing. Let's see how the trace it will look without the agent, right? So that will give a glimpse how it will look, with trace ID, without trace ID. So what I'll do is, so there is two ways we can run it. We can run this boot run, but this time I'll not be lazy, so I'll go to the libs, and then this is my jar file, so I'll directly run this jar file, because that's how the instruction over here these guys are telling, right? So this is how we have to run the jar file and all, right? And anyways, we Java developers, we know, right, how to run the jar file from the console. So let's open this folder into the Explorer. Okay, so I am here, and then let's go inside libs. This guy have the jar file, right? So let's do cmd. So now what ultimately I am to run this jar file, right? So what I'll do, java minus jar, and then the name of the jar, what is that? Demo. Okay, so once I do that, now springboot, it will run it. I mean, that's a property of spring, right? It will invoke the main. So now you can see here it's running on port 8080, and you can see here OpenTelemetry run blah blah blah. This guy traceId null. This is the null, right? So that's where the problem is. Now we have to fix it. Now how to fix it? Yeah, the answer is OpenTelemetry, right? So let's stop this guy. Okay. All right. Now to run the agent, what we need? We need those exporters, right? So to run the exporters, what we have to do, we have to run this docker, basically this docker images, we have to run it. Now we know, right, how to do it. So first things first, you need docker desktop. Now whoever doesn't know how to download the docker desktop, you can directly go to docker desktop, sign in, and then your docker desktop will be ready. You download this exe file, it will be there in your system. Unless and until you do this, nothing will work. So make sure that it should have that. And in my previous videos I already discussed about this, right? Alright, so with that understanding, let's run docker compose docker compose what is that file name? Docker compose viable. Okay, docker compose viable. There is a mistake. I think it should be minus f. Minus f. It should be up. Right? Yeah. It ran. Let's see whether it is or it is doing. Docker ps. I can see this is latest prometheus is on. Otel telemetry also, it's up. So I can see the statuses over here. This is up, up, up. So we are good with these guys, right? Okay, so let's do one thing now. Now, what about the Spring Boot application previously, right? Where we don't have this traceId and spanIds. Now we have to make sure that these guys are populating, right? So how to make that? Let's go to the documentation. So the documentation, so we have tried this java -jar and this app, fine, right? Now we have to inject these guys. Now we're telling that we'll inject this guy, which is nothing but our OpenTelemetry jar, and this is very amazing, right? This is OpenTelemetry is basically you can have other vendors, you can have Zipkin vendor, you can have other exporters as well. Like in my case, I am using Prometheus. Oh my god, this name is really crazy. And then so I'll be exporting this things over here, right? So ultimately this is my agent and these guys are my exporters, my vendors actually. These vendors can be anything, but this jar file, it will be very unique. So it's kind of interface they have created, and it is really nice. On the runtime, I'm giving the implementation kind of thing. All right, so let's go to the console once again, and we'll run in the similar fashion, right? So you can see here. Okay, by the way, we have to download this OpenTelemetry. Now whoever wants to download, you can come over here again in the documentation. You just click on this link. It's good to go for the Java developers, right? Now, so I'm passing this Java agent, and there are a few things I'm mentioning over here, which is not the service name. Again, this is optional service name. You can give your name as well. I don't mind. And this is gRPC because you have to. Okay, there are HTTPS also, but gRPC is more better because it will connection will be intact, right? So it will continuously, there will be connection, and then it will continuously feeding the data. So that's the reason people prefer gRPC, but I think there is an option for HTTP as well. Now the endpoint, if you see here, I am using the exporter. Now this is very main thing, right? So I am using HTTP 000, and you can see the port number is 4317. I'm not sure in my laptop. It's a problem with the video recording, but this is 2 places it came, right? And then now this guy is very important. Don't make a mistake with this. Come over here. You look into your configurations in this file. Any mistake, it will not run. Where is that? Otel. Yep. Yeah, so you just make sure that, right, this gRPC connection, whatever I'm mentioning over here, and this value, right, this is nothing but I am exporting into this, which is nothing but my Jaguar. This is one of my exporter, right, which will take the traceId and spanIds. Now just make sure that you have this address. You cannot give your local host and all these things, right, because it's running on the Docker, right? So just make sure that you don't do that mistake, because I did that. It took little time to fix that. All right, so let's run this. Okay, still it is null. That's okay, because right now there is no spanId on anything, but you can see, right, oh, looks like there is an error. That's okay. I think this is failed to export the logs. Usually, okay, I think that's okay. Okay, it's okay. Let's do one thing. Let's hit this application. So let's make sure my postman is up and running. So if I hit this, right, it should give an error because it's calling service 2, which is right now we didn't run it. So let's see if there is an error. Let it be. We'll see that. So I am running this. It given me 500 error, which is expected, right? Now let's see. Yeah, because it's calling 8081 sample external, which is not running right now, which is expected. That is fine. But you see the amazing thing. See the traceId. It's already there, right? So this is there. This guy, it's there. This is there. All right. So this is, you can see here, right? The same thing has been passed. I'll show you because why there are three times are there, because it's calling from controller, service layer, and then from the web client it's calling, right? Okay, so let's go to service 2 and we'll make sure that our service 2 is also running. So what is my external? Okay, this is external, right? So let's go to my build and then generated, no, libs. Let's open my libs. So come on. Yep, it opened. Now we have to run this guy. Do a cmd. Okay, and then let's do java minus jar and that jar file name, which is nothing but the. Okay, now let this guy running. Okay, for this also traceId and spanId is null, which is okay, but I'm not running this application with the telemetry. Now for this, right, there should not be any spanId or traceId, right? And then we'll inject here also, and we'll show you how you can connect all your dots, right? So let's run this application now. It should give a success now. Now external call is success, which is brilliant. And let's come over here. You can see it's still traceId and spanId is a null, which we really don't like. We have to put it over here. We'll do it in a moment. And then let's come over here. Now we can see here this traceId and spanId, and these guys are not crying now. So there is no error right now, which is really good. So let's make this. Oh, come on. Okay, let's make it down for now. Okay, and let's inject telemetry. So for this, let's inject the telemetry. So again, let's make sure that it should have the same exporter, otherwise it will not be having any idea the traceId you have to put. So make sure that if you have 10 applications, for all the 10 application, make sure that you have the same exporter, right? So in production environments, right, because I'm running in local, in production environment you should have a dedicated service for this exporter, so that it will take the data and then push into all your exporters. So this is the agent, sorry, this is the exporter, right? Now I am injecting the agent over here, and this agent I am putting into this exporter with the GVM arguments. Now I think this GVM arguments, I think because of this, it was last time we have seen, right, it was giving some error. Let me do one thing. Let's delete this once and see what will happen. Somehow I feel it's not finding this. That's okay. Let's delete it. Alright, let's run this. So you can see here right now. Come on, it still give error. That's okay. It's a gRPC. Failed 2 logs. Okay, we'll come back here. Okay, let's see if our applications are running or not. Let's hit it from the postman. Okay, call is success. Oh wow, it worked. I think that error, I don't know what to do with that, but our things are working. So you can see here, this is the traceId. Now take this traceId and go to the application 1. This is my application 1, and these two guys should match ideally. Yeah, it's matching, right? Starting for A4 2284 2284. Yeah, it's matching. So the point to note here, the span IDs are different, which is obvious. The span IDs for each services will be different, and it should not match, and it's not matching as well. So which is good. Now let's go to the UI, and I'll show you how beautiful is this, right? Okay, guys, I just make these two are up and running. So these two applications will up and running, or these two UIs or beautiful UIs actually. Once your application is up and running with the exporters, right, which we already did that by running the Docker Compose, you will once you hit these applications, right, you'll once you hit this, you'll get these informations. Now, if you remember, right, we have the traceId and spanId, and we have two applications. Now, this two you can see over here. It's so beautiful, right? So click on this operation, make it, whichever, I don't know, just make it all, and then click on traces. Now you see these beautiful things. Two errors. The reason why is we start in the beginning, right? We called it and then it given an error. So let's not go into that. So let's click on this span. So now see how beautiful is this. So I'm calling this hello. Hello is nothing but my this hello API. I'm calling this API, and then it's calling the external service. This is the sample service. Now for each of the services, right, it's showing me how much time it took. So this is so important, right? So I should previously write what we used to do as a Java developer. We used to write what is the in time, what is out time, and make a difference of that, and then put it inside a log. It's so annoying. It's just some, a lot of doesn't, lot of codes, it will be unused codes, and some smart people, they'll say, I'll write AOP, spring AOP. Fine, you can write spring AOP, but this is coming out of box. Spring AOP, for spring AOP also you have to write, cross cutting concerns also you have to write, and then you have to write JUnit for that. So for this, nothing is required. It's coming out of the box, and you can see how much time it is taking, how it is calling it. So those things, everything, it's have of its own all the data, right? And let's say you have prometheus. Prometheus, oh my god, this name. Okay, so what you can do over here, right? So you can fire some queries and see how, let's example, this is my JV memory. I think if I give an example, it'll be more better. So if you run this, I don't think you'll understand anything over here, but once you click on the graph, right, it'll show you how these guys are behaving. So how much, okay, I think it doesn't look good, right? So let's click over here. Yeah, so okay, there is one more very useful tool called Grafana. I didn't get time to set it up. So Grafana also you can use it. That is also very nice. In Grafana, you can use this queries, right? Saying that if once your JVM memory is going more than 50%, right, you should alert to many users or your dev team. So those things can be done in Grafana, but I really didn't get time. So you have some time, you just spend it. It'll be really nice, and that will give you more graphical representation. Now you can get it over here also. So all the many data, heap memory, everything you can see over here, right? Yeah. So this is what all things I wanted to show you in this video. Okay, guys, I think that's all for the video. So whoever wants to know about the MDC, they can stay back. So I'll be going to the legacy a little bit, and then I'll be discussing, so that you will get the entire picture. All right. So to explore about the MDC, what you can do, you can come over our Spring Initializer, and you can just click here and get the web application dependency, and then yeah, Gradle Java 3.5. Okay, that's fine. I'll just click here some example, open telemetry, MDC, right? So then click on generate. Oh, some demo name it got generated. I hate that. Let's make it as this name. Yeah. Then click on generate. Do I have this? Okay. Okay. So, where is that extract? Okay. Extract. Now let's do one thing, import into in my project, and we'll do very old style of coding. Import the project, open. Ding, ding. Where is my Gradle file? Here is open as project, trust this project. Nonsense. Okay, so it's done. So if I click on this and then it is done. So what I'll do, just open this and then okay, resources. So first thing first, I need, I have to change my server port. So let's write server dot port equals to, let's say, 8000, so that my existing applications, it will not. Okay, you are crying for something. Oh, come on, man, it's not having Java 17. Okay, so let me change it. I think I have to change my settings, Gradle settings. Come over here. Okay, this is 8, that's the reason it is crying. So let me choose 20, apply. Now also I didn't make it will cry because it need 17. Let's see. Oh, it worked now. Still it's crying. So I need JDK. That's okay. Where is my build.gradle? This is my build.gradle. And let's do one thing. Yeah, instead of this 21, because I'm running in 20, make it 20. Let's see. That's the reason I just make sure that everything is up and running. Okay, I think this time it worked. Anyways, let's open this and then let's open this. So application file 8080. Now I need logback file, so let me just copy it in the interest of time, paste it over here. Now if I run this application, right, it will tell me what all things I have. So let me pause it and then just create few of the controllers. Okay, my logback file is ready, and then my hello world also it's ready. So what I'll do, it's very simple, it doesn't have any fancy things. So I have a logger and then my hello world. Let's do one thing, let's add some logs over here, and then I'll show the MDC thing, log.info, and then let's say if I add, let's say, hello world, and let's make it up and running. Application springboot, so it will be up and running in my, I think 8000 most probably. I forgot 8000 or 9000. Let's try it 8000. Yeah, it's 8000. Anyways, let's delete it and then let's hit this guy and see it's giving success. And you can see over here this traceId and spanIds are null, so I'm not injecting anything from here, no traceability, right? So what I'll do using our old method, right, or let's say monolithic implication, this is how we used to do it. So we used to have something called MDC. MDC, right? So this MDC is coming from the SLF4J, right? This is this is the concept behind, the scene, how the OpenTelemetry is working. So the MDC, what you can do, we can put, there is a method called pult. So in the pult, let's give the name as the same which our logback file it's expecting. So let's give the name as traceId. Oh, come on, man, this is irritating. So traceId. Now let's give here, let's create something, UID, I believe it is there, dot now ID dot to string. Okay, now once I do this, it will see the magic. So it will be there in the MDC. Now once I do the MDC, right, you have to make sure that you will just clear it. So otherwise unnecessary. Yeah. So once I do this, right, across all my applications, all my services, it will go this trace ID. And this trace ID, it will be unique for each and every time I'm just hitting. Let me delete it and then let's run it. So you can see, okay, trace ID is not showing anything. Let's see what's going on. Maybe I missed it. It was showing actually trace ID, but anyways, span ID is null, right? Oh man, I forgot to give the first span ID. So let's make sure we copy paste the same name. So this is my span ID, right? I hope you're able to connect the dots. Now this is how we will keep the span ID. Now the span ID, it will populate, right? And copy paste span ID. Come on, man. Span ID. Now this span ID, right? And this is again random number will give, and then again start application. Okay, it's running. Now let's again run it. Alright, I have span ID and trace ID without OpenTelemetry, right? So this is the olden days we used to do it with the trace ID and span ID. And as you can see here, right, these are nothing from the from where it's loading. It's loading from the context, right? Now again the same question. Maybe the video is going too long, right? But again, if somebody wants to grab this information, right? Let's say I know because I'm creating over here, right? These are the places I'm just creating, right? So I have the information of the trace ID. Now if somebody wants to, in the coding itself, by doing in the coding, if somebody wants to grab those information, how somebody can do it? So for that, let's do one thing. Let's wrote one more line of code, right? All right, so we have seen that we are putting trace ID and span ID on the logs. Now what if somebody wants to grab these values, right? So for that, what you have to do, you have to add OpenTelemetry dependency. I am just showing over here. This is the OpenTelemetry dependency. Just add it. Once you are done, there will be you can read from the context, right? So what I have done, I have created one service. In the service, what you can do, you can write this code, which is nothing but the span. From the span, current span, it will take those values, and then you can assign it to some variable. Let's say string trace id equals to this, or let's say span id string, what's that, span id equals to this, right? So both of these two things are done. So that's how you can grab these two values from the context, and if these things are available, then it will show the value, otherwise it will be null, right? So that's all about the extra class, and thank you so much. It's very long video and I hope you really liked it. Thank you for watching, and do like and subscribe. It will give me a motivation. Thank you so much. Bye bye.